Well, tell me, mama, what's going on? Tell me, darling, what's going on?
Welcome back, everybody. Episode 14 of the Bacon and Egg Show. After a little hiatus, we're here July 25th, 2020. I'm back from the mountains and desert from a little socially distanced isolation from last week. So glad to be back. Jay, what's going on?
Hey, man. Yeah, I was kind of jealous. I was seeing pictures and kind of didn't like you for a little stretch of time there.
Had to
That's
get
all
away,
right.
man.
I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you. But no, everything's going good. We're just hanging out today, and it's a nice mild day. We already took a little hike out at Stagecoach Park here in Buda, and already went out and about today a little bit because it was so nice this morning. Yeah, man, ready to talk some actual sports.
Yeah, let's we actually have some domestic sports to talk about to lead off the show with here for the cup of coffee. The Astros played last night. They're 1-0, 8-2 win over the Seattle Mariners.
Go Astros!
Yeah, the season's back. Baseball, and we're kind of getting into that area now where it's not so much discussion about what's going to happen when sports, if sports come back, but they're here, and the Astros have opened up with a win. So I know we'll get into some more Astros talk, but Jay, anything you want to hit on quickly here in the cup of coffee regarding last night's win?
Nah, just glad to get that first one under the belt there. Verlander was what you expected him to be on opening day. The bats were alive. The bats are not going to be a problem again this year. It's not. They won't be. Astros are going to score some runs, and if they can keep people off the base paths, they're going to do well. And I know we'll talk about expectations for the season later on, but no, it was a good first win. Like I said, you can't go 60-0 unless you go 1-0. So we're a step closer to that. Here we go.
That's right. The sprint to the finish is on. It's crazy. I saw I think it was Adam Wexler last night that had a tweet after the game that said, with 59 games left in the season last year, the Astros had a 6-game lead over the A's in the division, and I think an 11.5 game lead over the Angels at that point. So they were in a pretty comfortable spot with 59 to go. Verlander had a good quote last night about basically approaching this season as, it's a big playoff race to the finish, and to kind of go, okay, there's 59 games left, and as of today, everybody in the AL West is either tied or within a game. So it's going to be a pretty wild run, but glad it's back, and kind of I know we'll get into this a little more. I'll just say, the MLB Network broadcast last night, I was able to watch the first half inning of the game before they put in the blackout restrictions and shut the game off for the Austin area. But it was a very eerie, we're so used to seeing Minute Maid Park these last few years, just crowded, noisy, and all the energy and excitement.
Yeah, it became
really
one of
eerie.
the loudest stadiums in the league.
Yeah, it was really odd to see just a completely empty stadium with no noise whatsoever, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure we'll adjust to it like we have watching the rest of the sports, but
insert trash can banging joke there because you'd be able to hear it because it would be quiet.
Yeah, and in fact, maybe instead of banging the trash can, they could just yell from the dugout now. Like, why even hide it? Just yell what pitch is coming. And
here comes the curveball.
Yeah, I actually would be shocked if someone. It would probably be Bregman or something like that doing that already at some point this season, just yelling something out from the dugout, just to irritate the other team. But
is he one of the most polarizing stars? Like, are people going to be able to get behind him as a superstar in this league because he's that talented? And are people going to be able to get over sort of like the initial, I guess what the initial thought about Bregman has been as a, as sort of a brash, cocky player, and being tied to the Astros and all that stuff adds to that. Do you think he'll ever be appreciated for the superstar that I think he's going to be?
No, I don't think so. I think he's going to be one of those guys that like he's going to be a cult hero in Houston for Astros fans forever,
Yeah.
because of the attitude and the performance. But um, I love the guy. Like, but how if you're not an Astros fan,
Right.
given the scandal and everything like that, like I think I don't know. I'm trying to think of a good comparison from another sport of someone that's just kind of like that's a superstar, but just that other fan bases just can't stand. I mean, Draymond Green kind of comes to mind, big star, successful organization there at Golden State, but like people that aren't fans of Golden State just cannot stand the guy.
Can't stand that guy, and he's a great player. It's one of those guys. Yeah. Anyways, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Like, I think it's a shame too, and Bregman has sort of come. He's sort of softened a little bit recently, and just in terms of, he's just that guy though. He's good, and he knows he's good, and he's gonna continue to be good. So it's like, what do you do? Like, it's just the guy that he is. I know we'll get more Astros later, but good start to the season for the Astros, man. And I'm just happy to see baseball again. Like, it's just happy that it's there.
Yeah, Lance McCullers goes today, game 2 of that series, and I think again we'll get into this a little bit deeper, but big series coming up next week for the Astros. So it's they should handle business here against Seattle, and they're going to have some nice visitors coming to Minute Maid Park with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder coming this week. So we'll get into that a little bit later.
Yep.
But what else do we have going on this week to kind of? Oh yeah, the Washington football team, as they are now officially known. That's their name. That's what they changed from the polarizing racial slur name that they had before, to now the Washington football team. So
Literally, like, that is their
that's the
literal
name.
name, the Washington football team.
Yeah. So whenever they play the Cowboys, the Giants, or the Eagles in their division games this year, it will be the Washington football team versus the Dallas Cowboys or the Philadelphia Eagles. I bring this up because, well, for one, it's notable news. This has been something that's been getting a lot of push over the years, and it was, the unfortunate, situation with the killing of George Floyd, everything that's surrounding that, to kind of finally push Dan Snyder and that organization into doing something about this. People have been yelling about it for years, but now they decide to make the change because FedEx and the various sponsors and everybody finally said they're going to pull the money from his organization if they don't change the name. I mean, it's long overdue, right? I mean, it was bound to happen, I guess. But do they get any credit for doing that now?
No, none. And it's all money. We say this all the time. Is follow the money. That's money will tell you when things are going to get done and when they won't. And as soon as FedEx said, we're just going to take our name off the field, man. Like, we're not going to associate ourselves with you anymore. And that's that's a lot of money every single year that was coming into the organization for those naming rights. So, I mean, it's one of those things where, they don't get any credit, but it's they had to do it almost. It's like so
Yeah.
many of these companies that were putting out the statements. It wasn't necessarily because everybody from top to bottom felt that way. It's because some of these companies, in order to stay in business, had no other option but to put
Right.
out statements. And
Right.
that's the same thing here. It's like they didn't have another option at this point other than to change this. And I think it couldn't happen to a worse person than Daniel Snyder. Like, I mean, he's like the worst of the worst type of dude. And I mean, maybe they could go like Sentinels, like Shane Falco and the replacements, man. Like, I'd get behind that.
Well, and
I don't know though, man.
that's what's interesting is they said, like, okay, we're going with this Washington football team kind of placeholder name and uniforms. Like they're just going with the generic uniforms. It's still going to be the burgundy and gold and the same
Yep.
color scheme, but with no markings or, it's going to be numbers on the helmet like Alabama and that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They said it's going to take like a year to a year and a half to kind of figure out what they're going to re-identify as. I mean, I get that to a degree, but like you've already got the color scheme. You've already like shouldn't, I mean, I don't know. I guess they got to pay some marketing firm or somebody a lot of money to come up with the name. Like you said, it's going to be something obvious and what it should have been all along.
Man, I just don't get, like, how do you not have all this stuff ready? And so all the names that they wanted, apparently, this lawyer had them all under trademark. So the then Redskins, couldn't change their name to any of these top things because somebody already had all the rights to them, which is smart because the guy knew this day would eventually come. And even if
Yeah.
it didn't, it's probably nothing for that guy to buy the rights to that stuff and file the paperwork. So, because I'm pretty sure the guy's a lawyer. So, like, you're telling me you didn't prepare for this? You were so arrogant in thinking that you were never going to have to change your name, that you didn't work on this ahead of time? Like, that's the thing that doesn't make any sense to me.
See, I almost feel like that Snyder and them were prepared for it. Like they had like their list of potential names, but him being who he is trying to haggle over how much of a check he wants to send to this guy that has the copyrights on that name. And so
Yeah,
that
no doubt about it. And I'm sure it's and maybe the guy is just like, hey, hold on, buddy, come here. We got a special guest today.
Finn, what do you think about the
Finley's on the show
Astros winning
today.
last night?
Hold on. Go ahead, Kerry. Now you got him.
What do you think about the Astros winning last night? Are the
Can you
Astros
hear
going to
him?
win today?
Yes, they are.
All
Yep.
right.
They sure are, man. All right. You want to say anything? You want to say anything to everybody?
Bye. We're going to die.
See ya.
Yeah.
All right, man. See you in a little bit.
We're going
So, yeah, I mean,
inside.
yeah. So today is Finley Day. It's actually a day that we're celebrating Finley all day long and doing all the things that Finley wants to do. So to make an appearance on the Bacon and Egg show was on the list. So we made that happen.
Absolutely. That's great to hear. I know and people have been clamoring to get on the show, so it's good to
Yeah.
I don't blame him for having that at the top of his
Yeah,
list.
my DMs are full. I mean, I can't even check all of my direct messages. Like, it's just too many of them, too many requests.
I had to disconnect the fax machine. The faxes just kept coming in of requests to try to get on the show, and so just had to unplug it from the wall. And it's like COVID testing. You just kind of if it's not putting out any requests, then it doesn't exist, right?
Yeah, and it doesn't exist. Yeah, the post office told me I had to get a new post office box because it kept filling up. The one I had kept filling up so fast. These are just some crazy times.
Yeah, it's all part of the process, all part of the lifestyle. So
yeah.
The branch off of the Washington football team change, there was another revealing of an organizational identity, and these two kind of happening actually around the same time to me was really fascinating. So the Seattle Kraken have unveiled themselves as the 32nd franchise in the NHL. Seattle was awarded an expansion team, I think it was in 2018, and they revealed the identity earlier this week, and they're going to start playing the 21-22 season. Jay, I know we were kind of following along whenever they did this unveiling, which in the middle of this unveiling is when Washington announced that they were going to be just the football team. But so seeing these things kind of side by side was interesting. Jay, what did you make of the Seattle Kraken announcement?
I know I'm a fan of Seattle Kraken now. I think that's going to be my hockey team.
It was that stirring, that moving of a unveiling.
Yeah, you go to the website and I was overcome with emotion and feelings. And no, but they did a good job with their marketing. Like when you did go to the website, it was, you scroll up, you scroll down the page or whatever, and it was like our history of the logo, what each part of the logo means. Your typical branding of a franchise. They did a great job with it though, and it really was cool to see. And I think I'm going to end up following the team just because.
Yeah, they're off to a pretty interesting start. I mean, the logo is pretty cool. It's I don't know, the whole identity is pretty unique. I mean, the name Kraken in itself is really unique, and I think it's one of the only other, maybe the third team name in North American sports that doesn't end with an S. It's I think it's the Minnesota Wild and the Miami Heat.
Jazz.
Ah, Utah Jazz. I think I feel like there's got to be more than just those, right?
What did you say the first one was?
The Minnesota Wild.
Oh, I mean, if you want to include MLS, it's like Chicago Fire.
Yeah, Austin FC.
But
Those are
to
different,
your
though.
point though, no, they are when it's like FC or whatever.
Yeah.
But to your point though, it is still unique, and I think, and just the thought of that sort of a mascot or whatever, like that's not a normal thing that you see in sports in our country. So I thought it was cool, and yeah, I think they're doing a good job so far of trying to bring people in. So, and Seattle is going to support the shit out of them. Like,
Yeah, and I saw something that they completely shattered Vegas's record for merchandise sales on day one of the unveiling, and the Vegas Golden Knights have been extremely successful with, I mean, not just making the Stanley Cup final in their first season of existence, but branding and marketing and getting that city energized. I mean, it helps to be the first professional team in Las Vegas, but like, I think that just goes to show how successful and excited people are about the Seattle team, and it's going to be interesting to follow. They're going to have the expansion draft after next season, and if they're nearly as successful as what Vegas did with their expansion draft and how they built that team, they're going to be in good shape right out of the gate. So, but that's, yeah, pretty interesting to see one team, just kind of one organization really knock it out of the park, while at the exact same time, one in the Washington football team just completely kind of continue to trip over themselves. But
yeah,
Stan
shocking.
Snyder.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I'm like, oh, shocking. Yeah, the guy can get out of his own way, but yep, they did a good job with it for sure.
Well, all right. What do you think, Jay? Time to jump into some Pandemic Weekly.
Yeah, let's do it.
All right.
Weekly.
Feel the excitement.
Gotta
Yeah.
do the Pandemic Weekly. That's like just a initial version of what the theme song will be. I'm still fine tuning. So
Yeah, we have plenty of time. I don't think this thing's going away. So we have we have some time in front of us to really get that theme song nailed
great.
down.
I'll keep working on it. All right.
There you go. Perfect. Yeah, well, we're kind of brainstorming through it now, but I think you're on the right track. So
Yeah, good. All right.
well, let's
I'm
let's see.
I'm glad it was partly what you visioned too. Yeah.
Yeah, jazzy pandemic music. It's like a whole subgenre.
Yeah.
Just some coughing in the background. See?
I got so excited. Oh, it never fails. I got so excited that am I upside down? Let's just do the show like this.
We could. There's kind of a symmetry going on here. A little
wait, no,
yin and
no,
yang.
no,
Yeah.
no. Wait. Okay. All right. Let me fix this real quick, guys. But yeah, let's go into Pandemic Weekly.
Well, Jay, let's start off with the NFL. What do you have on our NFL pandemic stuff? I heard we're going to have training camp start on time, right? And that's going to be what, in the next 3 days? Something like that?
Yeah,
Is that
real
Tuesday? The 28th or something?
It won't be long. Yeah, we're only a few days away from that, and they barely got that deal signed. I mean, they talk about going under, up until the last minute to get a deal done, but I really think everybody wants. Pardon me. I think everybody wants there to be football this year. The owners, the league, the players, everybody wants to play, and I'm not surprised that they got a deal done. But of course, in typical fashion, they wait till the last minute. But no, man, I'm glad to see it, and I'm anxious to see how this works. If any teams get caught breaking the rules that are set in terms of limiting the number of meetings and what their facilities are set up like. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, the Patriots are going to get hit for something, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Belichick pushes the boundary of whether it's like meeting limits, practice limits, like he's always at that edge. So
Yep.
If there was a way to put some money on which team is going to get knocked for coronavirus protocol violations, I'm gonna go with the Patriots.
Yeah,
Go with the
that's safe
Patriots.
money.
My second would probably be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Now that Tampa Brady,
Oh,
Tampa
you
Brady.
think? No, not Tommy. No, never. He's so pure. Everything about that guy, man. I mean, just what a dude. What a dude. You know, I just can't. If there was a guy that I would want to, when I grow up, Kerry, I want to be like Tom Brady.
I mean, who wouldn't? I mean,
God, man, what a dude.
I do like
His,
eating
in his
strawberries
Ugg
though, and I know
boots.
that's one of his things is like eating strawberries or something like that, like inhibits mental clarity or muscle growth or something like that. It's one of his weird like
Oh,
biohacked things that he's into.
oh, you
Uh,
have his book? Are you a TB12 subscriber?
I don't think he encourages reading because how can you, if you're looking at a page close in front of you, how are you going to see defensive backs clearer down the field?
Yeah, that's
You
fair.
got to,
He's always looking ahead, right?
yeah.
Always looking. Wow,
See,
man,
that's
that's why he's the GOAT. I mean, that's
it's
why he's the GOAT. He's playing chess. Everybody else is playing checkers, man.
exactly, yeah. So, well, not so much related to that note, but on the NFL side about rust and being ready to go and cutting corners and preparation and all that stuff. Like, so at this point, it's official now, right? There are no preseason games
Right,
this season for the NFL.
right.
Um, Typically, we get a little bit of the preseason. There's some injuries, and players get some live game action. Um, this is going to be a pretty interesting opening to the season the first few weeks, right?
I mean, you got to think that because they're talking about allowing them to have the bigger rosters all the way through to keep camp bodies, like keeping the 90-man roster all the way until the beginning of the season, so they won't have to make cut downs and can have more bodies to go through whatever kind of drills that they want them to go through. And I mean, of course, without getting like actual game time, like week one, I think I'll be taking the under on some of those games. Error, sometimes the offenses seem to be ahead of their defenses depending on the scheme. If you have a team where there's a lot of people that are familiar with each other, those are the teams that'll be that will look to start quickly. And the teams with new head coaches and new players in key positions, they may start a little slower. The thing is that if nobody's gonna know excuse me, nobody can predict how this is gonna go, man. And I'm happy that we're starting to we know that these things are coming and we're gonna be able to actually see them and talk about them.
Yeah, and I think that's an interesting thing you mentioned about the teams that are more familiar. Like, I don't think we're going to expect Kansas City or Baltimore to kind of lose a step. Those
Right.
not huge additions for either one of those teams. No changes in coaching staff. Like, I think they should be just about ready to roll. Houston could be an interesting one. I know, there is a little bit of a change in the coaching staff again with responsibilities, but also a lot of changes. Like Deshaun Watson's got a new running back that he's got to work with. He's got essentially a whole new set of receivers to work with. That could be one that takes a few weeks to really start to click. And then also we talked about Tampa Bay and Brady. I mean, that's you're just dropping Brady and Gronk in the middle of a whole nother cast of characters. How long does it take for them to start to click without those preseason games? But yeah, it's we're going to be getting to the point where we're actually talking about real live football, and I'm we can bash the NFL for a lot, but I actually think that they're one of the better. We've discussed this on previous shows. Like I think they're one of the better suited leagues to actually handle this pandemic and being able to kind of keep teams and players and stadiums and stuff like that isolated. It's a shorter schedule. It's I think it's more manageable. You know, there's only one game a week. You know, you look at baseball playing, you know, especially with this 60 game kind of condensed sprint. Astros, I think, are playing 6 out of the 7 days, you know, coming up. So like player test positive in the middle of that. How much time are they missing relative to the amount of the season where player in the NFL tests positive, they might miss 1 or 2 games at most.
Yep.
You know, and so I think it's easier for the NFL to handle and kind of um, you know, get to the end of the season, but you know, I think just like with the preseason, first, you know, week 1 or week 2, we're probably going to see a couple superstars go down with season-ending injuries, just like we do every year. But this time, it's going to happen regular season and not preseason.
You have me thinking about Deshaun Watson, and it's like we've talked about on this show how Watson has been successful sometimes just because he's Deshaun Watson. In spite of the coaching, he's just that transcendent of a talent. I think now with the way that this current season is set up, we're going to know if Deshaun Watson is elite. Because if the Texans get off to a fast start, it's going to be because Deshaun Watson got them there. And if that's the case, then I think that we're going to be talking about Deshaun Watson in the same breath as Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. I mean, I think most people have Watson a tier below those two guys. And I think it's fair.
Well, I don't think that's so much based on his play so much as like just the team results, right? Like the record that Baltimore put together last year, kind of that really vaulted Lamar Jackson up into that conversation. Patrick Mahomes is the defending MVP and Super Bowl champ. As amazing as he is, I mean, that's still a team trophy, you know, that they won against San Francisco. And I think that's the thing. I think Deshaun's play has shown that he's in that tier, but we just need to see the team results. And as we've talked about, taking DeAndre Hopkins out of that equation doesn't help. But I think you're absolutely right. If they get off to a fast start and start winning some games and really looking like contenders, then I think he's in that top tier for sure.
If Deshaun Watson's the quarterback in Kansas City, do they win the Super Bowl?
Ooh.
Is he on that level? That's sort of what I'm getting at, because I don't disagree with what you're saying in terms of his play. But when I think about that, and when I think about where – and again, Houston was up 24-0. Was it 24-0?
I think so.
In the second quarter in Kansas City. It's not because Houston didn't score in points. Okay, so I totally understand where you're coming from. But I think to be considered in that next – he needs to be able to get to an AFC championship game and get to a Super Bowl to be talked about in that same sort of thing. I mean, there's no doubt the talent's there, and I think he is. You know, with a little bit better team result, he is in that conversation. There's no doubt about it. But I want to see it, and I think that he has every chance in the world to do it if Bill O'Brien gets out of his way.
No, absolutely. I just hate that you talk about Bill O'Brien getting in his way, and it's the removing of talent for him to have at his disposal. And you know, we'll see. I mean, it's not like the Texans won a Super Bowl with DeAndre Hopkins on the roster already, so it's not like, you know, who knows? This could end up being a addition by subtraction type thing with adding some more bodies around. But
are we going to see him run more this year because the options out wide aren't as good? I mean, is he going to have to run more this year?
Yeah, I think so. I think he's absolutely going to have to, which, I mean, I think his talent says that maybe he should run more given what Lamar did in Baltimore. But obviously that opens up a whole world of
that guy loose, man.
Yeah, but it does open up a whole world of potential injury and those kinds of things. But and especially when there's already discussion about his contract and those kinds of things, how much is he going to be willing to, have 10 plus carries a game?
Yeah.
So that's going to be interesting, which, we'll see how it plays out. But that does bring me actually something that I found interesting. Let's talk about the Cowboys real quick in terms of talk about money and quarterbacks. Dak Prescott got the franchise tag for a season. How's that going to affect his play? And how's that going to affect the Cowboys this year? Do you think maybe, we had talked about before Dak's desire to get a 4 or 5 year kind of deal from the Cowboys. Does that, knowing that this is essentially a 1 year deal, how much money is he set to lose if he gets injured or anything that, could potentially screw up those contract negotiations for him down the road? And does that affect his play? Does he play a little bit more reserved in his?
No, if he stays healthy, he's going to get paid, and he's the type of quarterback where I don't think getting and having an injury would hurt him as much as other quarterbacks in an open market, because I think people know exactly what they're going to get from him as the face of their franchise, and that's the kind of stability that people are willing to pay for. So I don't think it would hurt him as much as others. I think Dak's going to play his ass off this year. I think Dallas is going to have a good year, and I don't think it's going to affect his play, because if they franchise him next year, isn't it some absurd amount, like $53 million that they would have to pay him or something like that, because it would be the third year in a row or something he's going to get paid, right? Am I right on that? Isn't this his second time being franchised, or was this his first time?
I'm not entirely sure. I don't know if the last one was just an option on his rookie deal.
Well, either way, I think he will get paid, and and I think he's going to earn that contract this year. I don't think they're going to have a choice but to pay him because he's going to play so well.
Yeah, and I think he seems to be the personality type that's not going to take the foot off the gas to, over concerns over contract stuff like that. I think he's going to show up full strength and be ready to go. All right. Well, I think that's about it for NFL stuff this week. Camps will open up next week, and I'm sure we'll start hearing more as players start arriving to camp, and we'll see how this thing goes in the build up to the season. But let's circle back around. Let's talk some more Astros. Let's get a little bit deeper into expectations now that the season has started off. Where's your mind at for? We'll start here. What are your general expectations for the Astros this season in this shortened sprint to the playoffs?
I think they get out quick, get out in front of this division early. I know it's going to be the beginning of September, and everybody's going to be still in the running. I get it, but they have the ability, as you saw last night, to put together, just to smack people around and to win games convincingly and to wear people down over the course of a series. And I think they're going to do that early and often. I could see the Astros going something like 40-20. To me, that's sort of I'm pretty sure that'll be good enough to win this division, and it may be good enough to be one of the better records in the league. So I anticipate them winning this division, doing well, making the playoffs, and making a run this year. They need to do it now. They have a 2 or 3 year window here where they're not having to pay everybody, and they've already started to take care of some people. But I think we're going to start to have to get a peek at the Astros farm system and over the next couple of years and really see if they've kept up the job of scouting and development as they have with some of these guys that are stars on the team now. But,
Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting – beyond the obvious of it's only a 60-game season and it's a sprint to the finish, and the playoffs have been expanded, and there's going to be 8 teams from each league getting in, and just all these DH across the board, all these various things that are making it such a unique season. but I can't help but think about how this is such just a transitional and interesting year for the Astros in terms of, you talk about that farm system. Jeff Luno's gone as part of the, you know, sign stealing scandal. AJ Hinch is gone. So the effect of that on the farm system management is going to be fascinating to watch. But also, you know, when Dusty Baker was hired, he was hired as a manager to kind of come in to be a guy that um, personality management and a guy to kind of steady the ship. You know, one of the criticisms of Dusty Baker, I feel like when he was brought in, is like the way that he manages his pitching rotation. You know, the fear of him burning some arms out. You know, especially with some older pitchers like Justin Verlander, Zach Greinke, and these guys in the staff. I kind of feel like this is setting up to be the perfect kind of season for a manager like Dusty Baker. You only got 60 games, so why not push Verlander a little more? Why not push Greinke a little more than you normally would? But you know, I think it's setting up pretty well for him. And plus, I think with the whole COVID thing, they're not going to have a choice but to start working some of these young guys into the lineup on a maybe not a day-to-day basis, but getting a lot more time than they normally would have.
That's a great point. Like, just with the style of manager that Dusty Baker is sort of known for. And I remember reading an article that sort of not debunked that about Dusty Baker, but you know, like it for a period of time with those young Cubs arms, he had some blowouts, and then he sort of has developed even more as a manager. Has sort of even gotten away from it a little bit more. But I do think that if there was ever a time to be that dude, it's right now. Exactly like you said. It's a really great point and a great perspective to look at it from, because the Astros have the arms to do it. They have the arms to just, hey guys, let's just go balls to the wall for 60 games and go as hard as you can and just give everything you have, because we don't have enough. You know, this is it.
Yeah,
And
this is the shot.
You know, when they get Urquidy back, and you know McCullers is coming off of Tommy John, but I think he's gonna have a great start tonight and have a great season. I think he's gonna be one of the more when we look back at the end of this season and across the entire league, and when you look at like the final statistics and like what pitcher stands out from this that we didn't think would be here, I think Lance McCullers is going to be on that short list for the entire league, and maybe even in a Cy Young capacity, in Cy Young conversations, because in this short of a sprint because now I know he's dependent on his curveballs. He can work that but his fastball is effective too. And in a short season like this, where he doesn't have to worry about throwing over an entire season, he's the type of guy that can just put up results quickly. So I think they're in a really good spot. I agree with you.
Yeah, and I think one of our concerns coming out of last season and into this season was, how do you replace Garrett Cole? How do you replace his production as an Astro? And I think over the course of a 162 game season, that's harder to do, relying on someone like Lance McCullers and his injury history to be able to do that. A 60 game season is different, because if you're just looking at a guy that, you know, can get you 8 or 9 wins on his own over a 60 game season, that's incredible. And if Lance can do that, then you've essentially made up, because you already know what Verlander is and you know what Greinke's going to do.
Mm-hmm.
But if you can get McCullers to put that kind of production up, then I think you've essentially replaced Garrett Cole in a 60 game sense. We're talking 162 game, that's a different story. But I think those kind of factors are setting up really well for the Astros. Not to mention, I mean, I think the bullpen's in a pretty good shape too. I mean, the thing is, they've lost some guys, but because of these new rules with how you can bring in pitchers after only so many batters, they've got some pretty reliable. I know they've all had their moments, but You know, guys like Devo, you've got Asuna, you've got like, you still
Presley.
have Presley, who was
Yeah.
great. Like, you have these guys that you can Josh James, depending on what he does, if he ends up in a starting role, or even
Yeah, I think
Forrest
that
Whitley. You've got some options now, and I think that it's going to be interesting to watch. It's going to be fun to watch.
just so many. It's a really great problem to have that much talent at your disposal. Just it's yeah, it's going to be exciting to watch. And the Astros are one of those teams that can afford, if something were to happen, if there was 2 or 3 players that were to, like Jordan right now, Urquidy is out right now because of I don't know if they ever confirmed it, but it's because of COVID, and we would assume, and those guys are coming back, but just think about if 2 or 3 guys go missing, even on some of the bigger names, they have the ability to fill the gap for a couple of weeks and just hold on. Like 40 wins is a lot, and it's attainable if people are healthy. I really do think that, and I'm working under that impression, assuming that everybody's or that they're gonna be able to piece together the lineups to win 40 games. But I can't wait for this, man. This is gonna be one of the most exciting runs to the finish ever in baseball, and I hope that they're able to actually get this season in and play the whole thing, because this is going to be great television. It's going to be great sports experience.
Yeah, it's going to be really compelling to watch this thing come down to the wire, because you just know. I mean, already in a 162 game typical season, you have these races that come down to the final couple
Mm-hmm.
days of the season.
Mm-hmm.
Can you imagine? I mean, I know they expanded the playoffs. The top 2 teams in each division are going to get in, and then 2 wild card teams from each league. So you're talking 8 teams in each league, but those races between that second and third team in the division are going to be crazy. Even probably the first and second and third. I mean, you're not talking about a lot of space that's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
there. The Astros they may end up winning the division by only 4 games or something, which isn't a lot. Especially if, like, it's then you have the Angels and A's or something like that are kind of competing for that second spot. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I think the Astros and the A's will be the 2 teams for me. Those are the ones that I think will play in that 1 and 2 role. The Angels will stick around for a while too, in my mind. But for me, it's the Astros and the A's in the West. But it's like you said, there are so few games now that if you lose 3 in a row in the last week, that can be the end of your season. You could have a lead and lose 3 in a row. I saw this. I think the ratio is like it's 2.7. If you win, it's like 2.7 wins, and if you lose, it's like 2.7 losses in terms of over a full season. So losing a 3-game losing streak,
Yeah, you're done.
you're down 8. That's like 8 losses. That's the equivalent of an 8-game losing streak over a full season. So that's what's going to make this so great to watch and be such good TV. So I'm looking forward to it.
Well, let's move on a little bit here. More pandemic stuff. Tomorrow's the final day of the Premier League. There's nothing really of consequence, at least for our interest, to discuss there. Arsenal have played themselves out of securing a European position through the league standing. So, there's really nothing for them to play for tomorrow. Their opponent, however, Watford, is trying to stay up in the Premier League. So I think, we'll see that kind of play out that way. One team fighting
Mm-hmm.
for survival while one has nothing to play for. So titles locked up. There's some battle for Champions League places, but none of that matters too much for our interest. But we can get into this next week a little bit further, but Arsenal are playing in the FA Cup final, the Football Association Cup final, against Chelsea. And basically, if Arsenal win that, they are granted a European tournament place. So a pretty big deal. Without getting into too much of the actual match preview itself, we can save that for next week. Does it really matter for Arsenal to qualify for Europe next season?
Yeah, it does for me. It matters to me. I think that for Arteta to really start to take that next step, to have even more games like that to manage, and to really start to fine tune the things that he wants to work on as a manager in an in-game setting. Not and let's just not. I'm not even talking about the money side of things either. Like, just for the development of him as a manager, I think that's important to get to play in those tournament games. So yeah, that's important to me. So I'm hoping that they get a result here on the first, even more so because it's against Chelsea.
Yeah, adds
So
extra bit of spice to it.
yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good point on the playing in Europe. You know, and a lot of people make the big deal about the money. Like, oh, well, if you qualify for these European tournaments, you get, you know, a big injection of cash. Where, I mean, I think with the Europa League, it's not as big of a deal because you have to make it really, really deep into the tournament to be able to really start seeing the money return on that. You're talking about playing, you know, paying extra wages for high wage players along that road. That the money thing isn't so much of an issue, but I think if anything, it's a signal of intent and ambition. I think Arteta having those extra games to manage is only helpful. You know, it doesn't. You know, it's a way to work younger players into the lineup and give them a chance. We talked about Saka previously in his contract. He wouldn't really be in the first team if it wasn't for Europa League action over these last 2 seasons. So I think it is important. But so yeah, they need to win the cup. But yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit more next week as we get, you know, that we'll be having our show the day before the cup final and we can really get into it. Um, let's see. What do we got? What else we got in Pandemic Weekly? God, we got all kinds of stuff coming up. We've got NHL, their bubble opening up. Is it the 31st? Is that July 31st that the NHL kicks off? Should have had that note here, but I think
What's
it'll
their
be,
time frame
yep,
like to the start of the season?
August 1st, Saturday, August 1st, as we're recording that the season will kick off.
Excellent. Man, there's just going to be so much stuff on TV now. Like, we're going to go from a wasteland of sports, just absolutely nothing, just tumbleweeds, and now we're going to go to having. I mean, I shouldn't say. I mean, yes, there was soccer came back and slowly come back, you know, and everything like that. But now we're getting into the bread and butter, the meat and potatoes. Everything is going to be back. It's just going to be this cornucopia of sporting events, man. And I'm not a big hockey guy. I think I'm going to with the Kraken. Like I said, I told you on the day that everything was coming down, like, why not just latch onto a new team and grow my fandom and my knowledge of hockey through a brand new team that I don't have any allegiances in hockey, so why not start new? And you know, that's exciting to me. But you know, there aren't many better tournaments than the Stanley Cup playoffs. Like, there's just not, in my opinion. And
Well,
I look forward to playoff hockey.
I have a bias, and I completely agree in your assessment that it's the best playoff. It's the best tournament from start to finish in sports on a year-to-year basis. You know, we can talk about the World Cup, and we can talk about these things that happen every few
Yeah,
years.
yeah.
But it's just in terms of action and excitement, the Stanley Cup's the best. And I think this one is going to be, and that's where I'm really curious. And we'll follow up as this tournament follows along, your perspective, because obviously I play hockey. I'm a hockey fan. I'm going to be tuned in. I am every year for the most part. I'm curious to hear your perspective as this goes along, because I think this is the opportunity for the NHL and for hockey in general to pull fans, new fans, or anybody that, you know, just to generate interest. How do they get the person that hasn't really, you know, latched onto a team or has a rooting interest or anything like that locked in? This is going to be, I mean, 24 teams. It's the top 4 seeds. You know, in the West, the Dallas Stars are a top 4 seed. They have a first round bye. But how that's going to happen is those top 4 seeds are going to play just a quick little round robin tournament to determine their seeding. And then the rest of the
Amazing.
teams, the rest of the teams are going to go ahead and start their series, and then it's the bracket all the way into the Stanley Cup final. And you have
It's
teams,
just
typically there's
surprising.
only,
Go
yeah,
ahead.
no, it's typically only 16 teams get in the playoffs. So you're talking 8 teams that otherwise wouldn't have had a shot now have the opportunity to play their way in
Yep.
and to
And
make some noise.
hockey's going to benefit from that, just like baseball. Baseball's expanded playoff system will benefit from that, because not only will the races all be closer, but there may be a circumstance to where the team on the final day of the season is like in second place, and if they lose and a bunch of other teams win, they could drop all the way down to like fifth or sixth. So baseball is going to benefit from expanded playoffs. Hockey is going to have, especially with these early rounds, people are going to be so starved for sports. They're going to get to watch some teams that maybe they didn't really ever pay attention to before, and then be able to get that rolling. If they bring in some cool camera shots, some cool camera views, they're already one of the more interactive sports in terms of interviewing coaches during the games, like on ice and stuff like that, like in between timeouts. You got the guy, what's his name, Pierre, that is in the glass in between
Yeah.
the two things, and they got him, and he's always there and bringing something. But Doc Emmerich to me is the voice of hockey, and always has been for me, even growing up. So that guy to me is if Doc Emmerich's calling a game, I definitely will watch. But I'm curious to see how the NHL attacks this, and if they really capitalize on the opportunity to bring in new fans.
Yeah, and I think the scheduling that they've put in place is only going to help that. And so the tournament starts on August 1st, a week from today, and there are 5 games scheduled for that day. They face off at 11 a.m., 2 p.m., 3 p.m., 7 p.m., and 9:30. And they all
All
mean
day.
something.
Yep.
And on Sunday, 1 p.m., 2 p.m., 5:30, 7, 9:30. You're getting that. It's like with March Madness. You know what time you can turn the TV on and there's going to be a game. You know what
What
time the
channels are they
next
going to do
one's.
this on?
This is going to be across the NBC Sports.
Great. Like
You know,
NBCSN and whatever. Are they going to place them on Peacock on that new app they got?
I probably so. I would imagine.
Yeah,
I would imagine.
maybe.
And I think there's also going to be like the local broadcast channels will do that too. So like the Stars, they start on Monday, August 3rd with just a 5:30 p.m. a great time to face off a game, one of their seeding games against the Vegas Golden Knights. My understanding is that Fox Sports Southwest is going to carry the Stars tournament game. So whoever's watching, if whatever package you have, streaming, cable, whatever, you can pick that up. I think NHL Network's going to be showing some. I think it's going to be wall-to-wall coverage. But even on Monday, games at 11, 1:30, 3, 5:30, 7, 9:30. 6 games on Monday the 3rd. And that's how the schedule stacks up for the next, at least the first entire week of tournament play. But
Amazing. It's going to
people
be
love
great.
March Madness, even if they don't like basketball. They go, I know what time the games are on. It's all day long. This is the opportunity that hockey's trying to do to get those fans in. And you never know, like yourself, you might tune in and start watching these games and go, this is a team that I enjoy watching. This team, like, I like the way they play. This is that stuff. You might find you latching on to somebody throughout this. And I think that's exciting for the sport. I think that's great.
You trying to get me to cheat on the Kraken already?
Well, I mean, they hadn't started playing yet, You never know. They could be just a bunch of scumbags out there. You never know what they're.
Yeah, that's I like them even more then. That's my kind of team. They better be a bunch of dirty scumbags. Otherwise, I'm not trying to watch them be nice to other
Yeah,
people. Oh no, I'm not
they just
having
got
that.
to out scumbag their now neighbor and rival Vancouver Canucks. So let's see how that.
Next to them. Anyways, that's
So, so another league that's about to start back up in the bubble is the NBA. That one's actually coming. That one's starting off before the NHL, right? Let me just verify that. I think that's on the The 30th. Okay, so Thursday night is when that's all kicking off. And looking at their schedule, it's kind of a similar approach to what the NHL is doing. It's wall-to-wall coverage kicking off. So any predictions for that? What are your feelings? I know that it's a little bit different than the NHL deal where the NHL is a playoff tournament. If you weren't in, you're out. NBA is finishing up the season, right? And then we're going to get into playoff action.
Right. So then it was 22 teams, right, that are in that bubble, and then they're going to narrow it down to the 16, I believe, for the playoffs. Because they're doing these like the initial games to finish the regular season, and then go into the postseason. I think it's easy to say that the Lakers are the favorite going into this. The Bucks are out of the East. I mean, you look at the conference standings, and it's like, well, those are the best teams. Well, they have the best records for a reason. Those two teams that play better than anybody leading up to that point. It will be hard for me to see a team outside of maybe the Clippers coming through and winning. But I just think the Lakers are going to be too good, and especially in this sort of a setting. And it's just not in a bubble. They're not going to be able to have home court advantage even against the Lakers. Like, they're going to smash people. When you look at the bottom part of the seedings in the Western Conference, if you want to talk Rockets, it's really tight. Everybody's just real bunched together, and the Rockets could end up as high as the 3 seed and all this. They're only 2.5 games back at the third spot right now. They're in the 6th seed as we speak, and the Mavericks are right behind them in the 7th seed. So it's weird to look at an NBA a Western Conference standings and see the Spurs so low.
Yeah, you kind of hit on that. I was gonna ask you about the Texas teams involved, and I was gonna ask, do the Spurs keep their playoff streak alive this season?
I mean, I don't see it happening. I think they're a little bit at this point. They're a little bit too far behind. But I do think we're going to see the first female. I think Becky Hammon is going to coach some games on her own. I don't know how many. I don't know, but I just have a feeling Pop's just going to not show up for a couple of games.
Yeah,
and just let her run the whole thing. And I think it's well deserved, to be honest. And there's a lot of people that feel like she'll be the first female NBA head coach, and maybe she'll be the maybe when Pop leaves, maybe she's the coach in waiting. But
that's kind of what I was thinking. Is that this almost seems like Pop's been in San Antonio for quite a while, and I think this seems like that kind of transitional thing that's going on here, that maybe COVID and everything going on has kind of pressed him. He's won his games, he's won his titles, that he's maybe saying, all right, might be time to hand this thing off. It's good. They're at a kind of transitional period as a franchise that it seems like it would be the right time. And it seems like it would be of course they would be the first one to do it, right? Like it just seems like a perfect kind of fit and situation for the Spurs. Welcome back, everybody. Bacon and Egg Show. After a little break there, the takes got a little too hot from that first segment. We needed to cause some technology issues for us. We needed a
scorching hot takes.
We need to let things cool down a little bit. But we're back.
Man.
Not only are we back, but is Texas back this week, Jay?
I'm not even in a good enough place. I don't even want to say we're back like I usually like to say it, because I'm so disappointed.
Back.
Yeah, we're back.
So Texas is not back this week.
Not in my opinion. Nope. I would not say that Texas is back.
I would tend to agree with that. It's the big news over the last couple of weeks since our last show, as we've discussed with Longhorn insider Michael Holland just how important the recruitment of the Brockermeyer brothers was for Tom Herman and for the Texas program. That didn't work out as he intended, or as Texas fans would have hoped, as the two brothers committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide. So
It's disappointing, man.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, maybe Texas. I mean, Texas was always in that top, 5 or whatever that they had narrowed down, and now it's almost like I wonder if it was only because of the fact that their dad went to school there and played at Texas and had maybe it was almost a courtesy, and that is why Texas is not back this week, because this legacy lineman has two sons, the top-ranked center and is it center and guard or center and tackle?
I forget.
Two of either way, they're the top of their respective positions.
And one was the number one player in the state.
And you lose them to Alabama, which we've talked about many times on this show. If you want to go play in the NFL, you go to the SEC. Especially if Alabama's knocking on your door, why not go to Alabama? You're gonna be in contention for a title every single year, and you know that you're going to be, because you're at Alabama, your production will be magnified because of that, and you will get noticed and you will get drafted. So why would they pick Texas at this point? And that's why Texas isn't back, man, because Texas still is not into a position to get players like that they should get, legacy players, and they're not getting them, man. And
third generation legacy, apparently. Not just their father, Blake Brockermeyer, who was an All-American and had a decent NFL career from Texas, but also the grandfather that played at Texas. They have their older brother is on the current Texas team. He was a walk-on player, but now is a scholarship player. Third generation legacies. And I don't have it in front of me, but Blake Brockermeyer had a quote this past week when he was asked about his sons committing to Alabama. He basically said, yeah, Texas has everything that we would want. They offer everything that any other program, that all the top programs offer. But what made the difference for the sons was Alabama's track record of developing and putting offensive linemen into the NFL. It doesn't get more cut and dry than that, or plain and simple, however you want to call it. That's what it's all about. It's put whatever feelings they may have about the Texas program growing up around it and being fans of it aside. It's about getting to the NFL. It's about making money. And Texas is not, the numbers on the offensive linemen going to the NFL over the last, what are we approaching, 13 years, 12, however long it's been, is atrocious. It's terrible. Connor Williams is the first one since 2008 to get drafted.
He hasn't exactly.
He's been okay
in Dallas.
Yeah. He struggled early, but
he's still developing. But it was Connor Williams, and that's it. And there's a reason that they're 5-star players. There's a reason that they're 4-star players. The likelihood of them getting drafted early, you see the statistics all the time. If they're coming as a 5-star, it's like 50% that they're going to be a first or second round or drafted at least. Like the statistics are there. So until they start pulling in these big, these big time recruits, I don't know. I don't know what would have skipped it. What needs to happen to tip the scales? Because if the Brockermeyer brothers both commit to Texas, that is a scale tipping get for Tom Herman. But you can see where Texas is still it's not ready. It's not yet ready for prime time sort of a place in college football right now.
Yeah, it's it's the chicken and the egg argument. You know, do you start winning 10, 11 games, 12 games, playoff contention every year because you're recruiting 5-star talent? Or are you recruiting 5-star talent because you're winning 10, 11, 12 games a season? And, you know, Mac Brown kind of showed early on in his tenure that he was able to get off to an okay start, 8, 9 games, winning his first couple seasons or so. You know, he looked decent, but was able to start recruiting that 5-star talent to then build into a national title winning team in 05, and then another national title contending team in both 08 and 09. Does Tom Herman have, is he the coach? I know, you know, we don't really know this until the results kind of pan out, but this is, so it's more of a rhetorical question, but like, is he the coach that can start making those 10, 11, 12 win seasons out of the 3 and 4-star guys? You know, it's one
If
thing
he
to
wants
win
to,
when you're getting 5 stars every year. Like, and that's what, once you get the ball rolling and the systems rolling, that's a different animal. But to build it, you have to do it without players like the Brockermeyers, but just lose the fact that their legacies and all that just make it that much more painful of a loss.
I think we need to come to terms. Texas football fans need to come to terms with the fact that nobody will ever own this state the way that Mac Brown did.
No,
And
not
and
again. No.
It's just it makes you think. It makes you really wonder why Mac didn't win more. To be honest with you, I mean, the 10 wins every year, that, you know, the streak that he went on, and it's impressive. Texas fans got accustomed to that and really spoiled by Mac Brown until, you know, as we know, in the last part of his tenure here was, you know, off a cliff. But the point is that Mac, when he was on his game, nobody ever recruited this state better, and nobody ever will. I don't feel like just like it. So Herman is going to have to be the coach to take the players and make chicken salad out of chicken shit in some instances. And if he wants to be the guy here, he's going to have to make that happen. And then, yeah, maybe if you see them in a playoff, then next year, you know, if they happen to, you know, overachieve one year and make a playoff, and then then a 5-star, and then maybe there's an avalanche, you know, okay, Texas is back in terms of the minds of what the recruits are thinking, and then they go after it. So he's going to have to be the coach first, I think, before the 5-stars start coming in.
Yeah, it's just, it almost felt like the Sugar Bowl win was that corner turning moment.
We thought it was.
We thought it was, you know, like second year in the program, to win a game of that magnitude against that kind of program in Georgia seemed like that moment where you could start to build that momentum up. And then it, obviously they weren't great the next season, but like even before that, the recruiting didn't really take flight the way that you would have thought. And I wonder how much of that is that long run of mediocrity, that where with Mac Brown, it was, you know, he took over at a time where Texas was still relative in, you know, in the minds of recruits, just coming off of Southwest Conference championships, won the first Big 12 championship over that fantastic Nebraska team in 96. Like, Texas still had success within the last few years before Mac took over, where how many years of winning 9 or 10 games or so is it going to take for Tom Herman? How many years of it making a playoff? The consistency is it going to take? Because as we've seen with that 10-win season and the win over Georgia, one season isn't going to cut it. And one big bowl game win is not going to cut it. That's not going to be what turns the corner. Now he's revamped the staff and all that. Like, I saw something like the kids in this recruiting class were 2 years old or so when Vince Young led Texas to that national title. I mean, we're talking 16, 17-year-olds now, and we're 15 years on just about from that level of success.
Yeah.
And I know Colt McCoy damn near pulled it off. Should have been in the national title in 08. We all know what happens in the Rose Bowl in 09. But even then, you're talking little kids, talking a decade on from that. And I mean, are we talking where Texas needs to kind of be they're going to get their pick of, or I shouldn't say get their pick, because obviously the pick of recruits are going elsewhere, but almost have that perception of like a program that's doing more with less and winning 10 games for 5 years before, to really start changing that perception amongst high school coaches and trainers. And I just don't see where there's got to be some sustained success here. And I just don't know if Herman can do that without getting the 5-star players. But I know he gets a handful of them here and there, but without that sustained recruiting success.
Well, and I mean, his recruiting classes haven't been awful, and nationally, he hasn't just done awfully. But when you look at these big head-to-head battles against the big name schools across the country, turning the corner on those and having a number 1 and number 2 recruiting class as opposed to a number 9 and number 12, a number 11 or whatever. That's the difference in the Jimmies and the Joes on campus, and it will make a difference. But he's going to have to show that he can coach, and this program can win before it's going to happen. I feel
he's got to develop. He's got to develop players.
Yeah. There's no Vince Young that's just going to show up and transcend the program. Like, you can't depend on a once in a generation player to come and bail you out like he did Mac. So I don't know, man. He's going to have to earn it. He's going to have to get there, and we'll see. This is year 1 again. That stuff that he says every week, we're gonna start. We're just trying to be 1-0 this week. Okay, coach.
I know that's your favorite line. I know that's how you try to live your life too. And I know you've taken coach's words to heart. I hear you say it all the time. Like, I'm just trying to go 1-0 today.
Yeah, just trying to go 1-0 today, man. Of all the things that Mensa says, like, that's the Mensa guy says, like, that's my least favorite thing. But anyways, he's just, but on a serious note, in terms of being like 1-0, he does have to win this year. And what I mean by that is he has to have a season that's deemed worthy enough of making progress. And that is how Herman will win the year, if you will. I don't know what I'm trying to think of, but I think you understand where I'm coming from. Like, he has to, in order for this season to qualify as successful, he's going to have to show progress in terms of development and all that stuff. So anyways, man, that's like, he's got to do it. He's got to show it.
No, I think so. I mean, we've discussed this, and we'll get into this a little bit more as we get closer to the actual start of college football season, which seems to be coming towards us at a rapid rate. But I agree with that. I mean, I think not only does he have to have a successful season, which I think we've discussed before is, winning a Big 12 championship. If that, entails getting a playoff berth, great. But I think competing for and winning the conference is probably a sign of success. But I guess to that point, I almost feel like even if that does happen, it's like the Georgia win. Because everybody's still going to be skeptical. They're going to go, okay, well, that's great. You won a conference, but you did it with a senior quarterback. You did it with, this talent and all that stuff. Well, what are you going to do next year? And everybody's going to just continue to wait and see what he does with this program. And it's going to be, okay, well, if he only wins 7 games in 2021, then it's right. Then none of 2020 and winning a conference title with Sam Ehlinger and all that stuff really matters, because people just go, see, okay, you did it with a senior quarterback and whatever.
Yeah, but you've got to do it again. You've got to do it once before you can do it twice. So I don't care how he gets it done this year. He's got to get it done this year with everything that's in front of him, and then show me that you can do it again. Like,
oh no, for sure.
Right? Like, that's
for
the
sure.
thing is, like, he's got to do it this year. This
for
is
sure.
the proving year. The senior quarterback, the guy that's going to probably be in Heisman Trophy talks towards the end of the year if the Longhorns have the success that they need to have. And I mean, it's got to happen this year, like progress. I'm not saying they've got to be in the top 5 at the end of the season, but we've got to see progress, and we've got to see them take a step. We have to see Tom Herman as a game day coach take the next step, and we've got to see the development in these players on campus take the next step.
No, for sure. And that's where my point is, just in terms of you want to get guys like the Brockermeyers. You want to start consistently getting those players and keeping them in state and outside of the SEC. It's going to take more than just winning the conference title this year. It's got to be not just winning a conference title this year, but then in 2021 being in that conference title game again and again and again and again. Because, I mean, we look at what Oklahoma has done for the past decade, and even and I know they have certain recruiting disadvantages and all that kind of stuff you want to call it, but like they've even struggled with going and, plucking the best high school recruits from around the country. And that's a program that had back-to-back Heisman Trophy winners these last few years and #1 draft picks who were transfers. And if Oklahoma can't get the national, and I know they're not Texas in terms of brand cachet and all that kind of stuff. I mean, Texas is fighting an uphill battle here for sustained recruiting, like relevance. I think Tom Herman's a good recruiter, but it's got to start winning some trophies to really start to put a dent in who's been coming into the state and getting their pick.
In this day and age, when recruiting is changing every single year and has evolved from when Texas was last relevant until from that point until now, recruiting has the way that high school football players are recruited has changed dramatically. And over that period of time, it's allowed sort of the non-big names or some of the bigger names to widen the gap between themselves and some teams in the lower tiers because of the way social media is able to amplify things, because you want Alabama to be able to tweet out that you committed, or that, that sort of thing. Like, yeah, there's a lot more, there's a lot more cachet, if you will, in being recruited by one of these big names now. And Texas just isn't considered a big name anymore. I mean, it is. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not trying to say like Texas has completely fallen off, but we've talked about this before. They have to work to get back into that upper tier to where they're even considered. Like after the Georgia win, the we're back stuff, there were a lot of people that were around with like, oh man, Herman is on the rise. Well, you see, it's not consistent. We've got to see it happen, and it's, Herman has to do it this year. Has to show progress. 10 wins. Oh well. See, the thing is are they going to get 12 games in? Even, how are we going to measure Tom Herman's success this year when might not even get a full season? Is it even a fair measuring stick? But he has a chance. He has a big opportunity here in a very unique time to solidify himself and give himself at least a couple more years to figure this thing out. If he can at least just show general competence and guide this team through a rough time this season, I think he can buy himself some time.
Well, as he said himself, momentum is an illusion.
Yeah.
Whatever the hell that means. But it's this is going to be I'd love to have Longhorn insider Michael Holland on to dig into this stuff a little deeper, because just even thinking about the Oklahoma situation makes me think about, does Texas have an identity problem in terms of recruiting and in terms of the program? I mean, you look at what Lincoln Riley does. I don't have the rankings here in front of me, but I don't remember the last time OU had a #1 rated class. But what they do so well is identify players that are perfect for their system. They know who they are as a program. They are completely 100% confident and solid in who their identity is
Mhm.
and the philosophy and the way that they play and all those things. And it feels like even going back to the, end of Mac's tenure, Texas has had an identity crisis. After Colt gets hurt in the national title game, Mac goes, "Whoa, we're going to start lining up like Alabama. We're going to run this like power running game." Totally turns away from like the zone read and that offense that won so many games for him. And it feels like ever since then, Texas hasn't really known who they are as a football program and as an identity. Is it going to be this tough, Charlie Strong defense and smash mouth football? Oh, well, it is until it's not, and you bring in a spread offense, to try to salvage things, and I just wonder how much of that has to do with it. Like it's, if you can evaluate talent, what players are going to fit your system to a T, then who gives a shit what the star rankings are? I mean, yeah, it's great. You want to get the best players, but if you can develop them and you can take
Yeah,
cast
Gary
offs so much,
Gary Patterson at TCU is a good
yeah,
example of how to be successful in doing that. And
Mike Leach when he was at
TC,
Tech.
TCU will never be, they're not ever going to be in the conversation for blue blood elite football programs, but they're going to be successful as long as Patterson's around with the system that he has in place. Obviously, when a team like that gets nicked with injuries and like TCU's had some bad luck with injuries over the past couple of seasons, I believe. And if your starters in that instance go down, it's harder to replace them with the backups on a team where you said you find pieces. You're finding bits of talent and things that people do really, really well. And when you lose starters in key moments there, I think it's even more it's even harder to replace them than on a team like Texas. But Patterson's a good example of how to take those 2 and 3 star players, just identify something that you can do really well and coach them up. And what Herman is yet to really show that he can do that with even the 4-star guys. And we'll start to see these players get drafted. Next year there'll be a couple of people drafted, a couple more people drafted. We'll see those numbers start to get bigger, and we'll be able to be a better judge of Herman's ability as a developer. But just show me.
Yeah.
So just show me, man.
Well, to transition a little bit, staying on the Longhorns here, but to transition from, that's a good way to end it there, saying, show me. One way that you might be able to see it with your own eyes is in the stadium this fall. And we're about a month away, about 5 weeks or so, I think, from the opening of college football season. And unless you've been, I mean, in a way, we've all kind of been living under rocks by staying at home for the most part, but there's a pandemic going on, and how comfortable are you being in a stadium with 50,000 people? Texas announced as of now, and we'll see what all changes between now and then, but right now the current guidelines say that Texas will be able to hold 50,000 people in the stadium for the home opener and throughout the season. How comfortable are you sitting in a stadium with 50,000 people, knowing what we know right now?
Not a chance. I wouldn't go with 10,000. That's just me. I might be overly cautious, but I don't know, man. Like I don't think it's not worth it to me to take that chance. I know
No.
the chances are slim. I know, like, if it's done right and people actually do socially distance win, I don't know how you can do that with 50,000 people in a stadium that right now holds about 96,000 while renovations are happening. So you're going to have twice the capacity of the stadium. How are you going to distance people? How are you going to, like, if you have like 10,000, you can draw a big circle or whatever, these are yours, maybe, but I don't know how you're going to keep people far apart, and people aren't going to wear masks. People are going to high five and hug and
Yell.
yeah. Oh, well, yeah, no kidding. And are you going to have to wear a mask if people aren't wearing masks? Are they going to ask them to leave? Like, is that going to be enforced? There's not a chance you'll catch me at a Longhorn football game this fall. Not one chance. But I know that there's a lot of people that feel differently.
Yeah. And I mean, just the logistics of it just seem like such a task. I mean, you've got to deal with concession lines if concessions are open, restrooms. What about people outside the stadium that don't have tickets? Tailgating. There's I know they're playing within the current boundaries, if you will, the measures that are being allowed to go, but like I just don't see how this is going to work. It's what is there about 50,000 students and staff or faculty and everybody on camp, that's on campus now, and I think that's still about the number. If it's been deemed that they need to take classes online for the fall and it's not safe for 50,000 students and faculty to be on campus, how's it safe to put 50,000 people in one building on a Saturday? That would be the question if I was a player, a student athlete for the Longhorns. That would be the question that I'm asking. Of course, everybody wants to play. These guys want to go out there and play.
Yeah.
But where's the like, wait a second. Okay, look, it's one thing to like test us all week and all those things, and let's go out there and play another program and players that have been tested all week. Kind of like we're seeing in the other sports now. We know that these measures are being taken for the players. What about the band? What about the cheerleaders? What about the fans that are coming in the stadium?
Don't forget about the Palm Squad.
Oh, never. No, that's just assumed that,
Oh, okay. All right,
we don't
just
need to
making
mention
sure,
them.
man.
We know that they're present, but
Making sure your head's right. Okay.
always. So, but that's my whole thing. Like if I'm a player on the team, I'm going like, wait a second, it's not safe for us to go to class, but somehow it's safe for us to, be in a stadium with 50,000 people that haven't been getting tested and all that kind of stuff.
And it's the gladiator aspect of this that it's just like it's like they're pushing for this so hard to get these athletes on the field to do this performance, to entertain for people. Like there seems to be this such like, well, we need this, and why can't we have football? We need to be entertained, and it'll make us feel better as a country if we see that. And it's like, well, first of all,
Who was it? It was the pitcher for the Nationals. Who's the closer? What's his name from the Nationals? God, it's gonna bug me.
Doolittle, is he the closer?
I think it was Doolittle. I think it was the last 2 weeks or so when asked about MLB coming back and all those things, and are you excited for sports coming back and all that stuff? And he's been a pretty outspoken guy over the years, and he basically he came out and said like sports are the reward for a functioning society. And given how this whole thing has gone down, has any of this seemed like society is functioning in a way that it deserves the reward of sports? I know we're glad to have it back, and this is actually a perfect transition for us into the breakfast wrap here, a subject that I wanted us to kind of discuss now as everything's coming back. Does any of this feel right? I mean, I know we're glad the Astros are back. I know we're glad the NBA is coming back. The NHL training camp for the NFL is coming. Does it feel like the right time? Does it feel right for these things to be happening?
Man, I've thought a lot about this. And I've thought a lot about the importance of sports, and there's a lot of people that watch sports, sure, but there's a lot of people that could care less. And
yeah.
For an outsider, for a non-sports fan to look at this and look at how it's being put as a priority over people attending classes, people being able to go to work, people being able to, go to the park in groups, for my kid to not be able to hug any of his friends, like it's being put on this pedestal. Like we have to have sports. We don't have to have any. Sports are not this requirement that we're entitled to. There's something that we get to experience, that to take our minds off of everything else that's going on in our worlds. and it's something that gives us a rooting interest and something to cheer for and something to be sad for. And sports are a lot of things, but required is not one of the things that sports. That's not a word that describes sports to me. So it feels weird to see that we're pushing through this and doing it in spite of the pandemic. I hope that it can be done safely. You know, so far the NBA, like I think the NBA reported no positive tests in the bubble. If that can continue and they can do this safely, that's great. I have a difficult time believing that putting 50,000 people in a football stadium
In a few weeks, in just a few weeks.
Yeah, I don't see that as being necessary. So, I mean, I don't
For
know.
unpaid athletes.
Yeah, it's tough for me, man. Yeah, exactly. It's tough for me because do I want to watch Longhorn football?
Of course.
Of course. But could I do without it while we get this shit sorted out as a country and as a world? Yeah, I think that I could do without it.
Yeah, I mean, here we are, late July as we're recording this. We are, over 4 months now into, this pandemic, at least from our vantage point, when this kicked off in early to mid-March. We haven't had any baseball up until yesterday, at least in terms, for Astros. And, I know there's a game the day before, but who cares? But like, of course I've missed baseball, and I've been dying to get that taste of Game 7 against the Nationals out of my mouth, and the entire Astros offseason with the scandals, with Garrett Cole leaving. I mean, just all of it. It's been a nightmare. I want it all to be over. And it ended yesterday with with the Astros playing again for the first time since the World Series loss. Which is great. I'm happy they're back, but like, just looking back over the last 4 months or so without having a summer of baseball, essentially, does my life feel fundamentally changed from that? Like, no, I'm fine. I'm glad the people that, for the most part that we know have been healthy. And even though there's been some positive tests and stuff like that for people we know and family and stuff, they've been okay. But like, it's a weird feeling. I mean, it just, you mentioned the NBA thing. They've done a great job so far. I think they've done as admirable a job as you could probably expect. From all accounts, the MLS situation outside of FC Dallas and Nashville having to drop out of the tournament right before it started because of their positive cases, it sounds like the MLS tournament in their bubble has gone over really, really well. And now they've moved on to the next round of the tournament. They've done fine. The NHL took the extra step of not even having their bubbles in the United States. Their eastern hub is Toronto, and they're going to have the western hub in Edmonton. All the players, everybody's going to be in Canada, if that says anything. So baseball, we'll see how it goes. I know me and you, we've discussed, like, is this season actually going to play out 60 games? Juan Soto for the Nationals the day before, or maybe it was on opening day for the Nationals, positive for COVID. He's a superstar at only 21 years old.
I heard he's 21.
I heard he's 21. I'll have to ask Joe Buck to confirm that. But he, so we're already seeing that kind of crack in the facade a little bit of Major League Baseball. And we'll see if we can actually finish this season out. I think, the college one is the one that really bothers me. It really bothers me because I think I can speak for both of us. We're really passionate about the Longhorns and passionate about college athletics. We love college football. We love college basketball, baseball. It just doesn't feel the same thinking about that coming back in a few weeks. It's this time of year, you get on social media, you start seeing the players are reporting for camp. You start seeing the videos from the practice bubble and all those things. You're going, oh man, this player looks good. They look sharp. I'm getting ready for the season. We're only, 40 days out. It just doesn't feel that way. Like it feels kind of wrong for college football right now, to be honest. It's we talk about the money and the money grab that college athletics is and how we wish the NCAA would just upright disappear. This is, they're letting this thing go a little too far, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I mean, we'll see. Let's get there. You know, let's get to the first game of the year. Like Tom Herman says, we're ready. We're preparing to play on September 5th or whatever that first Saturday is. We're preparing like we're going to play a game on that day, which I guess is what you have to do. But
Yeah.
it,
Was the other day
until
Michigan State had to they've quarantined their entire program now
Yeah,
for
2
14
weeks.
days over positive tests.
Yeah, the whole team. So it just seems weird to be doing this in this time, but we'll see how it plays out. We have to hope for people's health and safety, and you want things to be as normal as you can, but there's going to have to be an understanding that normal just isn't normal anymore, and we're going to have to live with things being different right now. And there's a lot of people that have a difficult time grasping that we're not going to be able. It's like when we talk about, I won't go down that road, but it's a matter of just keeping our eyes on the prize, getting through this pandemic, and figuring out a way to get everybody through this. If we're going to play football, it has to be safely. If we're going to play whatever, and 50,000 people in the stands isn't safe in my mind. And having them play just each other in just even that is, it's taking a priority. But college football is taking a priority over lives at this point. I don't know. I feel the same way you do. It feels weird that we're doing this, that we're having it. I'm so glad to be able to watch sports right now, but
Yeah.
It's just a weird time to be happy about something. I guess it's a weird feeling. So we'll see, though, man. I'm gonna watch it. I'm gonna watch it while it's on and enjoy it while it's on. So I feel like you'll do the same, and we're gonna show back up here next time and talk more about it all.
Yeah, and I'll ask this question before we sign off for this week. With baseball, the Astros being back yesterday, I think we mentioned earlier the eeriness of Minute Maid Park with an empty building with no noise, all those things. And to me, well, I'll ask you this. Would baseball, let's just talk about baseball specifically. Would it really feel like it was truly back, like something to celebrate, if they just canceled this season and we got to the spring and stadiums were able to be packed on opening day with people, just hypothetically? Or this?
What's the question now? What would I rather have?
What would feel like a true celebratory return to baseball?
Oh, I mean, I think delaying it and starting in 2021 with a full, slate of games and fans in the stands. But what if we get to April, man, and we're still not there?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, this is obviously everything about this is a calculated gamble, if you will, and I think the payoff would be greater if we waited it out, but this is going to be, if we can make it through the entire season, this is going to be one of the most fascinating seasons, I think, in the history of the game, because all the statistics are out the window and nobody's going for any, outside of maybe somebody, because the season's so short that the odds of somebody maybe being able to hit 400, I guess, are greater. But other than that, like, you're not going to be thinking about somebody hitting 70 home runs, or like, none of those numbers are attainable. So it's just like these team-oriented goals that people are going after. And there's going to be so many people in the playoff hunt in the last week of the season that it's going to make for entertaining stuff. So I'm going to watch it. Obviously, I'm pumped about it, but it's a weird spot to be, and I wish people would understand severity of this and how people all over the world are laughing at us as a country because of the piss poor management that we've had of this pandemic, and people's unwillingness to wear a mask. So maybe we can get to that point. I sure hope so.
Yeah, me too. Well, I think we'll eventually get there, but yeah, it just was a weird feeling tuning into that game last night, and there's a beer commercial before the beginning of the game that was like, "Sports are back." It's like, are they?
Yeah,
Is
our
it?
sports back. Yeah.
Is it back? Like, and that's where I just go, well, I almost feel like until we get the people back in the stadiums, and that's something to celebrate. That's a
Yep.
reason for us to go, you know what, we did it. We're back in the stadium. You're around fellow fans, the smells, the sounds, everything of being in the ballpark or the arena or the rink, any of those things can actually come back and you go, okay, we did it. And until then, it just feels like you said, I'll be tuning in. I'll be watching or at least following Astros games every single day throughout this season, as I do every year. It's just different, and it's a adjustment. And just like with the Premier League stuff, we adjusted to it once that started back. It's like now it feels like the normal kind of games broadcast. But anyway, interesting times. But next week we'll have. God, we're gonna have a full slate next week. We're gonna have NBA coming back. We'll have results in by the time we record next week, and NHL facing off that day in a FA Cup final to preview, and NFL training camps getting underway, and Astros, and
We're gonna have to find a way to not go 5 hours next week.
we're
we
gonna
ran a little long this week.
I know we're a little. Well, we made up for some shorter episodes the previous weeks, but it's we're gonna have doing the show planning we're gonna have to tighten it a little bit, I guess.
Yeah. Snip a few things off. Yeah, we'll make it happen though.
All right. Well, Jay, it's been good. Glad to be back in the saddle and have some actual sports to talk about amongst all the other stuff. But
yeah, man.
All right, let's do it again next week. I think it'll be August by then, right?
Yep, we'll be in August. Let's make it happen.
All right, man. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll see y'all next week.
Peace. Go Astros.
Thanks, everybody. Late.
ATX represent. Fatal, baby.
Falling on 6 on a Saturday. Can the drip and swing now?